We'll stand. We will call this meeting to order. At this time, if you will join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Thank you for being here this evening as we conduct the special meeting notice for the joint work session of the Georgetown City Council and Georgetown Scott County Planning Commission for the day which is on the March 30th, 2026. A reminder to council as well as those out there, council, make sure and others that you up here, make sure your mics are turned on, hitting your button down there. Likewise, if you need to talk, pass the mic. We got mics going on both sides so you can be heard. We will follow the agenda as written, as seen. So welcome and introduction. So I'm going to start this off, I guess. I'm Bernie Jenkins. I'm the mayor for the city of Georgetown.
Appreciate it, Mayor. My name is Tristan Black. I'm proud to be the newest member of the Planning Commission as of January, so excited to be working with you all here tonight. Thanks for having me.
Kim Minke with City Council and have been on the steering committee of the comprehensive plan for the last several sessions.
Karen Tingle-Sames, Georgetown City Council.
Mary Roby Singer, Planning and Zoning Chairwoman.
Sonja Wilkins-Britt, Georgetown City Council.
Tammy Lusby Mitchell, Georgetown City Council.
Todd Stone, Georgetown City Council.
James Stone, and I'm planning to run for about 7 years.
Juan Garrett, Planning and Zoning.
Melissa Adair, Planning and Zoning.
Willow Hambrick, Georgetown City Council.
Greg Hampton, Georgetown City Council.
Michael Crisp, Georgetown City Council.
All right. Mr. Holden, you want to introduce your staff, please?
Of course. My name is Holden Fleming. I have the pleasure of serving this community as the Director of Planning and Zoning. I'm joined by my colleagues, Mr. Red Shirley, Lisa Hanson, Toshi Tucson, as well as Mr. Mark Parker behind me here as well. We're just here to facilitate.
All righty, thank you. Again, thank you all for being here, and we will follow the agenda as written. Item number 3 is a statement of goals and objectives for 2022. In your packet, there should be those. Hopefully, you all had an opportunity to read. Give me. They're not, okay. They should be on your desk then, here, if you will look at those, which is the section on committee recommendations. So this is for our review. It should be here, Mr. Stone. It should be here. We just handed out to you. Okay? And those there, and as you can see, those are the committee recommendations for 2022 with this, excuse me, 2022. Let me make sure I got it here. You have those?
The recommendations?
Yeah, the recommendations.
Right here?
Well, do we have them, or am I missing them? Thank you.
So on the agenda, the review section is a reminder for you all planning ahead the next time that the comp plan is going to be ready for you all to review, and then just a reminder that the statement of goals and objectives is a part of that. That's just a reminder to you all. Okay. That's not necessarily a discussion item, just reiterating that you all spent some time talking about this at the last meeting, so just that reminder. Before you, the first true discussion item on the agenda, it looks like the recommendations of the council's Planning and Zoning Advisory Committee. Okay. There are copies of that report scattered, sprinkled throughout the 2 desks. This is the report that came from the committee that was given to the city council. I won't speak for anybody on the city council. There's not been any action taken on that at this time. It's just here as a discussion item, just because of the overlap between the conversation from the last meeting and just kind of letting people see where different people are on these topics, I guess. So I hope that clarifies item 3. Review is just supposed to be the reminder that statement of goals and objectives was adopted in 2022. It will be up for review next year, so prime time to plan, and then the last comprehensive plan update was in 2024. Any questions on that?
The recommendations are dated January the 12th.
So that,
Yes.
yes, that's when that was distributed. The committee had passed those recommendations to the city council in January of this year.
Okay, just make sure I had the right document.
All right.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor, could I ask one question on that area? Since we do have the next comp plan starting 2027, do we have a rough idea of the timing of when that would start?
Mr. Holden, can you come in? Okay, you may have to have a microphone to do that with.
Thank you for the question. So we're still very early on in this process, obviously. The idea to hit the ground running in 2027, we'll need to start looking to form committees by final quarter 2026. Very similar to this makeup of this group being joint planning and zoning as well as city council. We'll want to obviously implement and gather opinions from multiple sources. Barring the conversation and discussion tonight, I believe that right now we have a very solid starting point on our goals and objectives. With that said, there's obviously room for improvement. And so as this conversation moves forward, I think that we'll do a fair amount of work in shaping the conversations for the goals and objectives for 2027.
Thank you. All right, then let's go with our item number 4 for review and discussion. Recommendation from the City Council's Planning and Zoning Advisory Committee. This was the committee that was set together by council. I believe 3 of them were sitting here. It was Mr. Crisp, and also Mr. Minky and Ms. Sames were on that committee from the council. So as you see before you, these were some of the, from that, some of their ideas and some of their thought process on that. So if you want to look at some of those, if you have any discussion on those or questions or to actually go over that, we can do it at this time.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, go.
It may be a good idea for the committee just each to briefly go through their findings and summarize them for everyone.
Okay.
Please.
Okay.
All right, if you've got the sheet in front of you. Now, this has not been, we had a committee and just a subcommittee of the council. The council, as our attorney said, this has not been approved by the council, or we have jumped to this. Kim and I were talking a little bit earlier, we jumped to this instead of probably having a meeting first with the council to go over some of these things and get recommendations from the council that wanted to come to here. But for the 3 of us that was on the committee, there are some of the recommendations here. I'll hit the highlights on the pages. The first one was the review of the zoning text amendments that was actually brought to us from Planning and Zoning to take a review of those, which we're going to need to do that. Consider conducting an audit of definitions. That was one of the things when we went through that we looked at the definitions. A lot of the definitions seem vague, not clear, and maybe not up to date, that they need to be re-looked at. So everybody can, one of the things that we talked about is trying to make things as clear and easy in the ordinances as possible so everybody could understand. Number 3 was considering implementing a form-based code or hybrid approach in particular areas of the city to shift focus on strictly what use are allowed and how buildings and spaces look, functions, promoting walkability, the mixed uses, which are coming along. We've already got a piece of property coming that's doing that, and how do we best take a look at that character and work it into our city. Number 4, considering adopting a standalone ordinance for the city of Georgetown. If you look at it, Georgetown is wrapped in with the county on the ordinances, and actually the city council had Kentucky League City come to us to talk about planning and zoning. It was last year, and actually they were confused by looking at our ordinances because they got the county and the city confused. So because we are we're together, but we're separate, maybe the ordinances need to be stated. Georgetown ordinances, Scott County ordinances. All right, consider implementing the online, came from strongly from Kim, online portals, the zoning applications, all that to make it easier. That's not necessarily an ordinance, that's just a way of doing business that we recommend for the Planning Commission to do that to make things as easy as possible. And consider adopting the urban service boundary ordinances. Currently, that's done when it's put in there when you talk about the comprehensive plan, but the city of Georgetown probably should adopt that in an ordinance form, actually that. So that way, instead of the comprehensive plan really setting it up, the city of Georgetown sets it up, and then it gets put into the comprehensive plan. And that's probably one, as far as city council is concerned, will probably be some debate on that. All right, and then we were talking about doing and developing an inventory on vacant and abandoned property, unused property, what we could do with that, how we could use that better. Could there be ordinances separately done for that to bring that property in to use and make good value of it? And then each one of us ended up taking, because all three of us working together, even though we were totally separate on ideas and information and where we were going, which goes to show you how personal zoning, planning and zoning can be. But I'll run over mine, and then I'll turn over to Michael, and I'll turn over to Kim to do some of their considerations. Mine's on the back. Okay, some issues that came up while we were searching this that I think are serious concerns. One of them is variances. The number of variances, we've had many of those conversations, why P&Z has been here with some property that's come to us, but the variances, it starts out one thing, it ends up something else. There's several examples in town when it came in front of P&Z, when it came in front of the city council to vote on it, to accept it. One thing was presented, but now there's something totally different going on with it. Traffic counts, also concerned about traffic, the traffic studies where how much traffic, like I'll just throw Publix out there, it's coming to town, how those traffic studies are done, how much traffic's going to be impacted, what's the traffic going to be impacted into the subdivisions. I know the state kind of dictates the count, but I think the city should do its own ordinance to also dictate another way to count as well and take both of those into consideration. Zoning request forward to the council, we get it so late that if we want to have a hearing or something on it, we can't because it comes to us too late to do that. We had that problem with the property beginning of last year. The council needs to be better notified as to what's going on with planning and zoning, what activities coming to us, because you all approve it, but we have to put up with whatever problems it creates or it doesn't create. So amendment to reflect changes to the KRS 100. 275. So with that's standards, objectives. This is going to be controversial, is to set which I mentioned earlier, set the USB boundaries by city ordinance. More closely follow goals and objectives in the comprehensive plan. Those are the only thing really the city votes on, is the part of the comprehensive plan is the goals and objectives, and I think the council has taken it very loosely over the years and not paid close attention to it. So, and if you read the current comprehensive plan goals and objectives, we could have denied some of the property based on those, but we didn't do that, and we should have. Help P&Z more efficiently balance the city and the county's interests. That's one thing where you all are a separate group, we're a separate group, the county's a separate group. We each have interests that are separate. I think that's one of the things with being together for P&Z to understand what's important to the city, why it's important to the city, and what it means for the city when things are approved, so that we can have that relationship together. Insist P&Z making it more business friendly, tighten some of the P&Z ordinances and definitions, talked about that earlier, and consider separate P&Z ordinance for the city only. All right, so those are my concerns on there. And so Michael or Kim, who would like to go next?
All right, great. Thank you, Karen. First off, I'd like to compliment both you and Kim. You did an amazing job on the committee. I think we got a lot accomplished, and you were both an inspiration for me to dive in and do quite a bit on this as well. So congrats to you guys for doing a good job on that. I think rather than just go over, I had about 30 items. I don't want to bore you with all 30 of those. They're printed here. There's also some overlap with some of Karen's items and also Kim's. But I just wanted to say that I think this is a valuable opportunity for council and the Planning Commission to make sure that we're aligned, and that's not just with the comp plan itself, but how we implement it moving forward. As you can tell, we discussed the comp plan. We'll probably get into some committee recommendations shortly, as well as maybe some prior action items. But one of many things that I was making notes about today is maybe we should have a small number of goals over the next year or two that we try to accomplish, and maybe even one or two high priority items that we try to accomplish. Maybe we'll be able to do more, but at least that might be something worthy of establishing. But as we move through today's discussion, I'll chime in whenever I think it's appropriate or not.
All right. Mr. Menke?
Right. So, some of mine basically centered around some things that were included in the 6 ZOTAs that were originally proposed. You know, unfortunately, we didn't see those as city council, only the first 2 and not the last 4 until we got into this process. And so that's when we ended up seeing all of those. But basically, mine centered around 3 major categories: modernization, housing flexibility, and infrastructure were the areas that I focused on a lot. You know, being able to support the form-based or hybrid zoning so that, you know, we could do some more creative things and actually have it in statute or in ordinance so that it's set and folks could look at that rather than having to negotiate everything every time. Simplify the definitions and procedures. A lot of times that's in legalese and it can be interpreted several different ways, so trying to have plain language as much as possible, and then being able to have flow charts of the process. So it's very easy to see where folks are for the general public, as well as the applicants and those of us that are working through the process as well. The third bullet that I had centers around, you know, expanding the options for housing so that we can deal with the housing situation, whether that be ADUs, duplexes, townhomes, multifamily options, and looking at, you know, what's the cost benefit of the different types of multi-level apartment buildings and those kinds of things, and what we would need to do in order to, what infrastructure we would need to have in order to make that a possibility or not. The fourth one centered around parking. Because of the changes that we're seeing in neighborhoods, the road sizes and things like that, the size of families and the number of people that actually have vehicles per household, making sure that we have enough parking for a standard, whatever that standard may be, and folks know that going in, especially if the road sizes are too small to allow for on-street parking, because that is a challenge for a lot of reasons. And then looking at parking, you know, everywhere as well. Enhancing environmental requirements, so the buffers, tree preservation, green infrastructure, those kinds of things. The other thing I thought we ought to take a look at is updating the sign regulations and some of those things to make sure that we're in compliance across the country. And then adopting a clear design standard for the gateways, corridors, and our downtown area. So having that standard set so that folks know what the expectations are in those entryways into our community. But that's kind of the high-level summary.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else got any comment from either? Yes.
A suggestion. Some of these things are put in the form of questions for P and Z rather than suggestions for change. And I think it would be helpful, especially yours, a lot of yours, Mr. Chris, were questions. And so some of those, if P and Z could take them and find a way to get answers to those, I think that it would shorten this process considerably and allow us to focus on what actual changes need to be made once we hear the answers that P and Z already has.
Any other comment to that? Any?
I think it seems like a reasonable approach. Holden?
So I'll just kind of echo what was said earlier. This, Michael, can I just come sit next to you? Sure. In short, very reasonable, happy to help. So this memorandum, as provided by the commission that was put up together to talk about P&Z issues, this was brought forward in January. It's been on the agenda a couple times. The last thing P&Z wants to do is like step into your process or somehow assume the wants of the council. And so if coming out of this work session there's a desire for P&Z to comment on this memorandum, we'd be more than happy to provide additional information. What we'd also just want to make sure that we do is again, facilitate the desires of both the city council as well as the planning and zoning board. And so any way we can help in that, we'd be more than happy to.
All righty. Any other comments or any other discussion on this particular item?
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
Does planning and zoning have an internal yearning? Is this on? Yes. Does planning and zoning have an internal yearning for some of these same changes? Are there parallels based on what you've been given, what you've studied from the intention of city council? Are places that we already have some semblance of agreement on? Again, that would be helpful to the process, I think.
So I would encourage my board members to speak on their own behalf. From staff's perspective, with the goals and objectives that were previously adopted by the city of Georgetown, as well as the implementation guide that's in the back of our comprehensive plan, there's great desire to implement those items. In addition to that, I had the great fortune of working with the commission as a part of their fact-finding efforts. And I'm happy to see a lot of things that were discussed in those meetings finding their way into this memorandum. And so from staff's perspective, again, we've put our best foot forward with those other ZODAs. Obviously, you don't come up with a ZODA except for to try to improve something. But we have those ZODAs, and then anything else that we can do, staff is, again, supportive of. Again, our planning commission has heard those ZODAs. They obviously voted to forward those on. But beyond that, and particular questions related to, traffic studies. Every time there's development, we talk at length about traffic studies.
We do.
When it comes to infrastructure, we talk at length about the ability to provide infrastructure to those developments. And I'll leave it to there for my board members to speak on their.
Hey, what's a ZODA?
Zoning Ordinance Text Amendment.
Okay. That we all said, what is this?
There you go.
Sounds like something really awful, doesn't it?
If I could, Mayor, one of the things that I like with Mr. Minke's suggestions is the missing middle housing and the manufactured homes built on foundations with the same exterior, single lot family homes. One of the things that we could even go farther into that is, and this would be a benefit to Candace, who's sitting in the back row, is looking at towards the tiny homes as well. And encompassing all of that into somehow an ordinance that makes it work, that, people who are struggling to get to a point in their life can't afford a $1,500, $2,000 or more a month payment. They could look at something smaller, and I think those two options would be very well suited into what we're looking towards, so.
And if I could just comment on what Director Fleming said, I will say that several of these things that we've talked about within our commission, in the comprehensive plan process and then moving forward, certainly Holden coming into his job, one of the reasons that we selected him for the position is the fresh ideas that he was going to bring and has brought, and has certainly been very open to how do we do the things that he has seen work in other communities, that he knows from his professional benchmarking and sharing are positive developments and how to really rethink the way that we've done business a long time. Speaking to just a few of these on here, the traffic study thing, as he mentioned, is always, everybody always disagrees with the traffic studies. We have to follow, of course, the state statute. So if there's a way to do that, that can also incorporate a local ordinance that can at least, because I don't disagree, it doesn't make sense to at least at a minimum not consider what we already know to be approved development, right? Now, what's the process to do that and whether legalities around it, certainly I can't speak to that. But certainly if there are opportunities to do that. And I think things like the accessory dwelling units that we've worked on the county side. There's been a lot of things that have come before us that have really tried to rethink and find solutions to problems that we know are out there. And also to try to encourage that balance between preserving farmland while also providing for the development that's needed to support affordable housing needs. As well as balancing that with what the landowner's rights are as well. And it's all a very tricky balance every single time a development comes before us, because there's generally always one side of it that certainly is against whatever the development might be for a multitude of reasons. So doing what's right for the community, but balancing that with some new and fresh things. And I will also compliment Holden. He is, not that they weren't user-friendly before, but Holden has done a lot as it relates to making the planning and zoning office more friendly and modernizing and putting those processes in place to really be open and communicate with the public on a frequent basis. And I know the staff does a great job at that, and I'll commend all of them on the steps they've taken just in the past couple of years in that regard.
And on your traffic ordinance, or the traffic studies, and I'm gonna rub salt in the wound, I'm sorry, but.
It's not my traffic ordinance. I didn't develop it and I don't own it.
Using your all's farm on.
Oh, yes.
By Cardone, you know, they did a lengthy study.
The developer, not us.
Right, they did.
Clear. They did what they had to do required by us.
They said, well, there's been no major accidents, you know, there's nothing, and I could count on, you know, two hands the number of serious injury accidents and fatalities that occurred between Cardome and Bywater Farms that was not in there. And granted, that had been some time before them, but, you know, you still had quite a few serious accidents that they only went so far back. And I think I think we might ought to look at expanding that search level on serious accidents because of that. And I think that because, you know, you were in your case farm, they were putting a subdivision between a blind hill and a blind curve. And I just, that was my big hangup, you know. I didn't have a problem with the development. I had a problem with the traffic study that they said there was no issues. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I know of a huge number of issues that occurred.
I think the developer did what was required by law, and, you know, obviously if we need to change the ordinances, certainly that's what we're all here to talk about, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly what you said, Mary. You're right on. It's what's required by law.
Yeah.
So where we know there's a little extra to some of them, if we can figure out how to do what they need to do by law, but include extra but I know we gotta be careful, we can't do beyond a certain amount.
Right.
But if we can do something for the traffic studies to say, here's A, we know this is what the state requires you to do, but we don't think that's intense enough. We, as this community, require B as well. If we can figure out how to do that, I would love to see that be one of the things that we talk about in the future, because every time we have gotten together, we've talked about traffic.
Yeah.
Frustration with traffic usually, but we've talked about traffic. So I don't know if that could be possible, but for future meetings, I'd like for us to get together on that traffic. That'd be one of the things for the future for us to start really taking a serious look at. If there's something else that can not only what the law, what the state requires, but that we require something.
Yeah, I can't speak for the whole commission, obviously, but I do think there would certainly be appetite to talk about how could we go above and beyond, because we all live in this community too, right? We don't want a quagmire of traffic, and we want things to be safe. And It would also help us tremendously as it came to the hearings and hearing the neighbors' concerns and at least being able to share data that was maybe a little bit broader. I will also talk about, Todd brings up that property and we talking about traffic and everything else. One of the things and that it seems like particularly lately that we've struggled with is the whole discussion around connectivity. The city obviously wants connectivity. Neighbors in developments don't want connectivity, right? So I don't know if that's something you all talked about within your committee.
Not really.
It's a hot topic, probably the past 2 or 3 meetings at least that we've had relative to adjoining neighborhoods of developments. And obviously, it makes sense to have connectivity, right? But it is also a hot topic, so I don't know if there's anything even more we can do from an ordinance standpoint, because the answer comes back to, well, that's just always the way it's been. It was that way when Indian Hills was developed, right? If you think all of those years ago. So we don't necessarily have any meat on the bone to talk to surrounding community neighbors around, but it's obviously an important issue on both sides of it.
But, you know, with having the more hybrid type developments where you have more services and activities and, you know, connectivity then becomes a learned value, right? And a benefit because you want to be able to get to that park or that store or that restaurant or that school or whatever in a safe and accommodating way.
In theory, right?
In theory, right. But again, instead of it being just a large group of houses that we've been accustomed to, so to your point.
But it also even comes up like with the Publix, right? Not wanting the connectivity that was then going to bring traffic through that would ultimately go into Publix. So it's a tricky, but I get your point exactly, Kim. I think you're correct. If you can, over time, sort of change the mindset around connectivity can be good, walking connectivity, driving connectivity. And obviously, it's necessary for services.
I think it's a good idea to look at the traffic studies and how we do them according to the state law, but can we, Mary, you mentioned we need to go above and beyond, but can we go above and beyond as a locality?
That's something I would ask for Holden's expertise on.
I'll just peek over at the lawyers in the room as well. So one of the things that I think we can control at the local level is figuring out what triggers the traffic study. That's the first thing. Is a traffic study required or is it not required? And so getting that clear and understanding when this will apply is the first thing that we can do. And we've got existing standards. They change depending on the type of development. Past that, you know, there is a state statute that says a traffic study must include these things. There is nothing that prohibits my staff, and my staff has on occasion said, yeah, but what about this, or what about this? We've received concerns from the community related to certain issues. What do you have to say about that? And so I'd actually like to bring in my senior planner, Ms. Elise Katz. She's reviewed more traffic studies than I think anybody else I've met. And so if you'll just talk to us about that process a little bit and where you see our ability to improve our responsiveness to the community's needs.
So I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm going to start with that part of it. I just have reviewed a lot of our large site projects for the last 4 years, so I would say that I'm generally pretty experienced in that review process. From that side of things, there's kind of like traffic study, which is what everyone sees. It's the 100 peak hour trips in that window of time in the morning or in the PM, kind of in that rush hour coming to and from work and school. But you can also potentially, and again, this is all just trying to pull at memories of looking at other people's ordinances, but there's potential ways of doing analyses where you look at things in that type of item. So you can add like a sub-level where it's not 100, but it is 50. Potentially we can add that kind of review process. A lot of like the roadway improvements, so shoulders, turning lanes, XL, decel lanes, are really dictated by state highway design standards. Same thing with the installation of lights. Take, for example, the Legacy Run project north of Toyota at the intersection where Delaplane comes into Cherry Blossom Way. That area, for a period of time, if it was developed, will not hit that light benchmark because there has to be a certain volume of vehicles clearing that intersection. But at some point, it is projected that a light would be installed or some type of intermediary. So the traffic study identified that a light would be needed around, I don't know, midway through the project. But about 1/4 of the way through the project, improvements can be installed at that recommendation of that traffic study. But all of those things, the turning lanes, the lights, the midway improvement, all of that stuff is really relying on the state to determine when that appropriateness is going to come in. So we can say a traffic study points to, we need a light here, but if it's a state intersection, the state's gonna say, well, thanks for giving me your traffic study, we'll tell you when we're gonna put a light there. And we'll work with that person, but it's out of your guys' hands. So that's a very complicated part of the process for the traffic studies, that we want improvements, but that doesn't mean they always come on day 0 or day 1.
With that in mind, though, one of the things actually we did with that project in particular, there's this question of when. When you're looking at traffic study, there is a with development. And so those are two different things. So there is a predictive capacity to the traffic study. And so when do those improvements come into the project? And so the kind of the throw answer is when they're warranted, when it meets that requirement. With that said, obviously, that plan typically doesn't come back to planning and zoning, doesn't come back to the city for re-review at that time. And so, Elise, would you talk a little bit about the conditions that we put on that basically work as benchmarks along the development process?
Yeah, so as Holden stated, like when you're looking at traffic study, it's current conditions, it's proposed additional traffic, and then it's a 10-year build-out with and without improvements. And so improvements, again, being the lights, the intersections, and everything like that. I'm drawing a blank on the second half of your question now.
How we benchmark the improvements throughout the development.
Okay, so when you're doing that, like we can establish conditions or establish mechanisms which state that currently this intersection is performing at a level of service B, so there's some but very slight delay. Like it's not a clear fly-through, but it is a slow down and you have to pause for a second. But at some point with additional activity, it could reach a level of service C, which our comprehensive plan identifies as like the expected minimum performance for all of our intersections. So it's like a 20-second delay before you can make a turn, for example. Please don't quote me on that one. I'm not exactly certain on the numbers, but let's say 20-second delay. If you're hitting 25, 30, then you start to get a level of service D, and that's where our improvements are going to come into play. But from day 1, that may not always hit level of service C or D where improvements are going to come. It's a consistent monitoring by the state to evaluate average annual daily trips. It's a consistent report from the community saying, hey, this is getting really bad, advocating to KYTC and the state to say, hey, we understand that this was supposed to happen at this point, but we think that this needs to be here. But it all kind of comes down to us monitoring it as well with our conditions of approval that identify, like, we want this to remain a C. And every time that something new comes in, we're gonna ask for you guys to do an update, an addendum to your report and say, how's this performing now with this guy? How's this performing with the next one? And then when we hit that kind of line of saying, all right, this is getting to that level of D level, then we're saying, okay, well, what are we gonna do if you guys want, what are you going to do if you guys want to continue to kind of do the step development pattern? What are you guys gonna do to make sure that the roads can handle this? So when improvements come in. Does that kind of address your comment there?
So,
Go ahead.
so I'm wondering, we want to be proactive, and we want to be sensitive to cost and sensitive to the state requirements, obviously. So, but we know that if this development builds out as projected, we know we're gonna hit this milestone, this milestone, this milestone, at some point, give or take 1 or 2 years, in time. So being able to proactively install roadway, maybe it's marked for the minimum, 2 lanes, but has the capacity at the appropriate time, when the light is installed, when the next lane is needed, when the next length of acceleration or deceleration lane is needed, that all can be pre-done and put in place. Perhaps we need a mechanism for that developer if they're not developing the whole thing. We have a mechanism for cost recovery for somebody else coming in to add to it, similar to sewer lines and things like that, where you buy in. But being as proactive as possible, so you're installing at the least possible cost from the beginning, so that we're not coming back and having to tear it up, put in a new lane, and at the new cost, the new expense, and all of that. Just wondering if that's an approach from being proactive in forecasting and developing.
Councilmember Tingle Sams, I don't want to, you looked like you were going to talk too, so.
No, he's talking about, well, yeah, I got a question, but he's talking about like a development, like probably a Publix, and that's what you're referring to, things
Yeah.
off state. My question is going to be if it's not off a state road, so go ahead and finish.
So one of the benefits of having this joint session is I think we're able to address these issues from the P&Z side as well as the city side. And so if there is an opportunity to adopt some sort of city ordinance that talks about that or aims at that, again, I would look to the city attorney. You can provide great research on that, I'm sure. From the planning and zoning side, there's this concept called shadow planning, which is essentially where you take a look at a project and you understand that it's going to be developed in phases. And while no formal lines are put on the page, you basically plan with the intent that when those lines do come in, you're prepared for them. We actually exercise that when we process secondary residence permits. We require a 100-foot setback between the primary structures so that if in the future it were to be split, you could have a 50-foot setback between them in line with our development standards. So the concept of shadow planning, what Councilmember Minke just talked about there, is something akin to right-of-way shadow planning, where we understand the 10-year projection and we're going to ask the developer to account for that up front, not necessarily to install all the infrastructure, but to prepare the right-of-way to handle that infrastructure. That is a novel idea. I'm not familiar with, at least you know about this?
So when you're doing a traffic study, the state dictates that while you may only be doing one phase, if the area is like a large, we'll say 100-acre parcel, and they say, oh, we're going to only do 50 right now, but the whole property is already zoned accordingly, they tell you you have to do the entirety of that 100 acres. So we're getting a really wide range of things. In some of our projects, we have requested and required that applicants do dedicate right-of-way easements ahead of time, so that when they're coming through, they plan for them ahead of time, so their designs aren't, we're not suddenly taking someone's backyard and now the right-of-way is right up against their house. We are essentially reserving that space ahead of any activity on the site so that it can be prepared for that moment. We've also requested widenings and those types of items throughout that process.
I think you're maybe even going a step past that, though. Yeah.
Okay, for my question, and you answered a little bit of it right there, but, okay, so, for example, Old Oxford, what was Chef Pike, it's connector off of Connector Road, so Connector Road State. But once it goes down on that, and we've had, as I always say, it's before you, but we've had so much growth in down there, but the road hasn't grown according to the growth that's been put on it. So that's one of the things, even like the apartments that are going into the corner up there, yes, where it comes on, right there, that's a state intersection. But it goes on, and they have widened it up. You can start to see where they're widening it up to make the road a little bit bigger. But it's a traffic hazard in a major traffic area that there's not going to be much you're going to be able to widen Connector Road over time because of the way things have been built across there. And then like Old Oxford is a terrible road, and now we'll have 3,000 to 5,000 residents coming and going across Connector Road, and it's not wide enough in areas. So is there any way we can do something with that so that we plan that for the future, knowing that this farmland is going to click off as time goes on with developments?
Lisa, are you pulling up the future land use map? Okay.
I was pulling up the state highway plan for the Connector Road extension project.
Yeah.
Which does talk to that. I can pull up the future land use map.
So
That
again,
particular project that I was mentioning in particular on that corner, yes, they've come across there and they've widened it real nicely, but then as their property ends, there's a hill there, and all of a sudden you've got wide, back up to narrow, and it's in a curve that's hard to see. So those kind of things, how can we prevent things like that?
You know, we have a resident that comes to traffic committee frequently and talks about the traffic on not only the cars, but with the cars going above the speed limit, but with all the construction, you've got, dump trucks hauling gravel and dirt and everything else out there, and they're 60, 70, 80,000 pounds, and they're going across a bridge that's not rated for it. So, we've got some major issues in that area alone.
Which is, I'm sorry, Todd.
Go ahead.
That's what I was going to say. That's one of the things for the planning and zoning to be aware why we get frustrated up here is because it gets passed, and that one in particular, it's on a very narrow road that's not designed for that much housing. So then it falls back to us then to fix the road after the developers have already gone out there and create it there, and they're gone, and then we have to fix the road to handle what the traffic is, because that road is not, it's not big enough for that traffic that's now been pushed upon it, and where they have widened up a little bit for turn lanes and things like that, it's like the subdivision that goes on down, forgot what that's called, but you go in, there's a turn lane, but you go up to the top of the hill, and it's right after a curve at the top of the hill, and there's barely a turn area there. You have to stop. The people behind you are going to stop. It's not really a turn lane in there. So it seems like the roads aren't adequate for the developments that's going on them. That's my frustration. And then people come back to us wanting us to fix it, or we got to go fix the road and improve the whole road because the developer did this and this developer did that and that developer did that, and nothing goes together. Does that make sense?
I'm not going to have an answer tonight. That's 30 years worth of history that we just ran into. But obviously, this is a multifaceted issue. Councilmember Stone, you know about traffic enforcement, okay? You know a little bit, right? You know about that. You know about the human nature side of that. From planning and zoning, we know how you build roads can help influence how people are going to drive on those roads. But also we know when we utilize documents like the future land use map, we've got to be planning for that future land use to align with the infrastructure that we can expect. Understanding that there is a state plan to expand Connector Road. If you picked a good bracket this year, you'd probably be okay with figuring out when that project's actually going to go through. Okay, so there's a lot of different parts that are all moving together here. But fundamentally, I understand the point. We can't overbuild beyond what our infrastructure can support. With that, though, obviously you can see the tension when we talk about a memorandum that talks about the importance of infill development. We talk about the desire to have a mix of uses and have that connectivity. And so, right now we're on section 5A, local traffic studies and potential solutions. We've already talked about in 2027 we're going to come up with goals and objectives. This is a collaborative process. We're going to have to figure out what that solution looks like for Georgetown.
Yeah, and
No, it's okay. I think it would also be helpful, I continue to want us to be able to, this is a beautiful process that we've put into play, to have the ability to talk to each other and to identify problems. I also feel like there are things that stop planning and zoning legally. And is there a process through the Kentucky League of Cities, or do we need to come up with a process to advocate at the legislative level so that we can have more predictive traffic for these developments? And if state laws are in our way, then we need to find out what are those laws and how do we form the pressure on the legislation to change that. And that's just one thread of what we need to be doing here. But I think it's an important thread, and I think it's a hard piece to move. But they are our representatives and our senators, and if something's not working in our communities, we need to be able to advocate for it.
Well,
Do we have those processes in play?
One thing I want to mention about that, I myself, and along with others, have actually talked with our state representation from Frankfurt about some of those issues. One, and Holden and I have kept in contact talking about the Senate bill, I think it's 1819, House Bill 519 or somewhere along, or 6, whatever. What it does is, it restricts, it will restrict the ability for planning and zoning to regulate some of the things they regulate. You know, and I made this mention to our state representative about, you know, we have rules in place we call home rule, where it gives us the ability to advocate what's best for our community. And as long as they give us that ability to do that, that can be done. But when they tie our hands to where it takes away our ability to say, we know what our community should look like. We know what we want our community to be. But the issue comes in is getting them to understand that, you know, when you make a decision that takes the power away from us to self-regulate our own community, then it becomes an issue and a problem. So that's what, you know, we are advocating. You know, I've gone twice and talked with it. And there's been others have been talking to them to remind them about, you know, giving local government the ability to regulate what we should be doing for our citizens in this community, because we know best, because we deal with them best. So.
You're exactly right, Mr. Mayor. Every community is different in Kentucky, not just the people, but the buildings, city layout, everything. And generally, that's why there are quite a few legitimate concerns about home rule. So you're exactly right. And I think recently, Nicholasville and Danville did a similar joint session about this to also discuss it. So it's really good that we're having this discussion too, collaborating and moving forward.
All right. And anymore, some of you commissioners, if you got one, you're welcome to weigh in, because I mean, you represent the side that the constituent side. So, you know, you're welcome to weigh in. If you got an opinion, we're glad to hear it. If you got one.
I got one for you, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Took a number of notes on this when I was looking at the recommendations. It's already been alluded to, but I think it's important we remember a lot of these, I think, would serve to mitigate a lot of the community concerns and oftentimes valid criticisms that we, especially here on the planning and zoning side, but that are also leveled against the city council. Case in point, adopting a form-based code might seem like it would make things more complex. From me getting myself up to speed, it seems like it would make development more predictable. Apartments are inherently unpopular. Got a lot of people say stop building the apartments, but if they could look at a mock-up and be able to predict what those apartment complexes are going to look like, might make them a little bit more amenable to, you know, not being as upset by some of that development. I also think a lot of them play off each other naturally, so obviously defer to the city council on what items they want to move forward with. But for example, infill development, if we're able to somehow incentivize and prioritize using our existing properties, that would limit expansions to the USB, one would think. And so if we, you know, do that inventory, understanding, you know, what areas are, you know, underdeveloped, underutilized, that can limit expansions to the urban service boundary. So big fan of many of these and would be curious to see sort of the order of priority in moving forward. And I think getting like sort of a write-up from planning and zoning would be helpful. What are the barriers, if any, to moving to a form-based code? What would it take to develop this inventory of different properties? So curious to see how we move forward with these.
All right, thank you. Any other comment? Anything? If not, we already talked about local traffic studies and potential solutions, you know, as we know that, especially when it comes to state roads, you know, the traffic counts and so on is really, we're at there what they give us, but hopefully by us actually keep at it and letting them know that, you know, as our changes around our community and growth patterns change, hopefully they will adhere to that. Item B, the steering committee formation is our next topic here. So I think this is one of the items that you all talked about is forming a steering committee. And this steering committee, and correct me if I'm wrong, will be made of council members as well as people in the community. Is that correct? So give me some direction as to how do you want that to be structured? You want how to set up? How many of those people you're going to need to have on this steering committee? You know, where do we select them from? What is the process of selecting these people? are some things you got to keep in mind?
I think first of all, you need to decide how many are gonna be on this committee. Secondly, probably, once you decide that, I think, the mayor as well as, the director, Holden, determine or select those people from the commission and from the council. And then I think it's the utmost importance that we have representation from the community.
Absolutely.
Who that is, again, maybe that's something we post on, on social media and taking applicants for it. Are you interested in doing this? So I think that's one route to take it.
And then, okay, so in that selection process, of getting them from the community, and, you need to figure out as to next, who makes that decision after you get the application.
Right.
Give an example is that, when we do board appointments, they do an application and then we do the interview process and then make a recommendation to council as that. So what would this process look like is picking somebody from the community? What does that look like?
Maybe you look at someone from the business community, in Georgetown, Scott County, and then just, private citizens.
I think he's asking who decides who that would be.
Yeah, right, and I think that would probably fall on,
A joint, maybe a joint decision.
A joint decision.
Be in favor
And
of that.
Holden might have something, now the Agricultural Stakeholders Committee, similar kind of what we're talking about. It was more come one, come all kind of thing, but Holden might have some reflections to offer from that in terms of sizes or dynamics or.
Yeah. So, at this point, more than a year ago, I believe our office was able to bring together a really strong group of agricultural stakeholders. That group was a little different in that, yes, it was come one, come all. You did not have to attend all the meetings. But that was really to just get a finger on the pulse. If it is desired that the council and the commission to move forward with some sort of joint steering committee to analyze all the zoning ordinances and look to implement some of these priorities, I think it's got to be a much smaller group. The number 9 came to my head. If you could do 3 city representatives, 3 commissioners, and 3 people at large from the public, that could be, I think, effective. Or you give the community more of a voice, and you go to 11, and you have 3 city council members, 3 planning and zoning commissioners, and 5 members of the public. But what we're really looking for from the staff side is someone who's willing to dig into the details. As anybody who's read through our ordinance knows, this is not light reading. And I had a conversation with Ms. Pat Foley, who's in the audience. When you write something down, you don't always write exactly what you think you wrote. And so having a group who can really, again, get in and really understand what the implications of what we're putting together are, is going to be very important. And so those are the first 2, 9 or 11, 11 or 9.
Would those numbers include you and the mayor separately or integral to the 9 or 11?
Well, so as staff, I wouldn't consider myself
But you would be an advisor to.
I would facilitate any way I could, but no, I would not name myself as a member.
Gotcha.
I think it would be interesting too to see how it could dovetail with the, thinking timing wise with the comprehensive plan process coming again the beginning of the year. It would be interesting to see how it can dovetail with that and perhaps help us improve community engagement with the comprehensive plan, because that was a real challenge this last time around. Unfortunately, no matter how many meetings we had, it was kind of the same people that would come and listen and would get involved until it came to actual time to review it. And then we heard a lot of feedback about, what about community involvement? So anything that might happen there might help facilitate that as well.
How many steering committee members do we have for the comp plan? Do you remember?
Go ahead.
I was just telling him, So in total for the comprehensive plan, we had, I believe, 20 individuals. And at the time it was the mayor and then 3 city council, the mayor, or the judge executive, 3 magistrates, representatives of the utility company, and I think a board member, and I think Chase was on that board.
Was.
housing represented, the soil conservation board was represented.
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec was there, the business community, I think Kim, you were on it as functioning as a member of the business and industrial community. Jack was there when he was working for the Chamber of Commerce. So ultimately, together, we probably had about 20 individuals in that group. And then we also had board commissioner members, I think we had 3 or 4 of those.
But what I'm hearing is if we could segue this group and this steering committee
Would be
into
fantastic,
those
I think.
2027 goals and objectives, I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Obviously, you need to supplement it with the county side, right?
Yeah. So what about the Sadieville Stamping Ground? Because you've got them as part of the comp plan as well.
Yeah, the respective mayors of both of those
Right.
communities sent, either they had their board member from the planning commission represent them, or they sent in one of theirs, I believe, but Jordan, yeah, they sent one of each for them as well.
So for this particular committee, are we looking at trying just to do what within our realm here, city, and, because what we're looking at here with county versus city, we're trying to look at things that's gonna actually, for the city aspect.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing here, you know, and I get it. So I hear number 9, I hear the number 11, and if we want more community input, 11 would be a number. Would anybody have an objection to 11 on this subcommittee? You know? Anyone?
No, you know me, the more public, the better, and I would like to have, I would honestly, I don't know how you go about finding these. I want the people that are complaining, as well as the people.
I can give you a list, I'm sure.
Yeah, but once again, though, those people complaining not always want, like you said,
That's
to come
true.
to
Show
the
up.
table.
That's
And
true.
when you have to make a decision to make what's right for people, it's okay to get to complain about it, but when it comes to the table, say, okay, let's make a decision, how would you fix it? They have no answer. So,
Well,
and I don't want
but
that to happen
I
either.
think some of those people, to put those people into the process as well, if we're gonna have 11, say 3 and 3, and then the rest are the public, yes, you wanna put some people that understand planning and zoning, and you wanna put some people in there that are the people that are frustrated by planning and zoning that we hear from, and give them a chance. And if they come and they fizzle out or whatever, so be it, they fizzle out. But at least you've given that side of the community a chance to speak out as well, because, you know, I like to hear that side too. So.
Yeah, I think it made great, but again, I think that if you want, for this committee to do what it needs to be doing, we need to make sure we're actually spending the time to making sure that we're addressing what this committee wants to be done, what this group wants to see done.
Well, even if you have just a member or two on whatever that category I'm creating here, but you still have a majority is on the other side to move the process, to be responsible to move the process along. But I really think it's great to hear what they've got to say, but that's just my opinion.
All right, so 11 is a total number, okay? And then we're gonna have 3 from city council, 3 from the commission, correct? And then we're gonna have, I guess, 6, and then we're gonna have, is that 5? 5 from the general public. All right, now, the 3 from the 3 and 3, that will be selected by me and, would it be, Mary? Not you, stay out of it. You don't get to vote on this, okay, so you're out of this one. So you and I will have to get together and decide on those 3. The other 5 then will be selected through a process. One, they need to go, I don't know how we can get something online to where like we do with our board and commissions, is actually put something online, they have to do the online approach from there. And then, I guess from there, you have to look at and get a screening group, so who's gonna be the person to screen all that? Okay, you gonna say something, go ahead.
Before we put the cart.
Go for the hearts.
Yeah. So the council, at some point, you all will need to take an action to create this committee.
Okay.
This conversation today will not create a committee. We need some type of formal action to establish that
Right.
body. And in doing so, that's where you can set the parameters for
Okay.
seats, who you're looking for, expectations, that sort of thing. So there will be a separate action item outside of this meeting with this body. So great to have this discussion and talk through these things, but just want to clarify the record.
So we.
This is not an outcome from today.
So we got at least a plan intact that, once we get this action item done through council, we're looking at to have 11 people for this process, okay?
And as we go through this process, I know that in the school system, when we go about site-based elections, there is a stricter process to make equity a part of the committee. I'm not talking about having strict rules, but it would be my hope that women would be represented, that minority populations would be represented, that different parts of the community geographically would be represented. So when the picking starts happening, I hope that that will at least be part of the ideation and the composition of the committee.
All right. Okay, so we got that steer committee. Next is.
So, Mayor.
Go ahead.
So if we can bring the horse back behind the cart just a little bit, from behind the cart. So the council has yet to define what
This
we
committee gonna be,
want.
what this committee gonna be doing?
Yeah, I referenced it, and so did Karen earlier, that what you have in front of you is a group of 3 opinions, and from that work and from a lot of great interaction, but as a body, we haven't come up with, okay, what is it that we want this group to do, what their task is, and how they should go about doing that. Obviously, in collaboration with the commission of how we want that outcome to be. So I think that's one of the things that we need to be talking about in this component as well.
All right.
Mayor, I had one quick point. No objections to the number 11 figure, but I think it's important, like Willow was mentioning, having demographic diversity. I think age should be a consideration, getting some young people involved. We've got a lot of eager, bright-eyed young people, students here in Scott County. I've got names in my head already, kids who would volunteer, whether they're sitting as a voting member or at least coming in to sort of supervise or shadow some of these deliberations. If we're talking about future land use, having people who are going to be here not just 5, 10 years in the future, but 20, 30, 50 years down the line. So getting some young people involved would be great.
Okay. Any other?
So what's the process to, I guess, prioritize what the primary outcome of the committee should be? I know we talked about Holden answering maybe questions that are embedded in here, which is sort of maybe step 1 to kind of parse down what's in here. And then you have a group of things that needs to be prioritized, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, understanding this is a work session, neither body can make any decisions tonight.
Right.
What it seems to me is maybe there's an opportunity for, as a commission and as staff to the commission, for us to essentially reply to the memorandum. Not just the formal upfront, but then all the specific opinions that then
Yeah.
follow. And we can do that.
And in that, you could put any
Yeah.
legal parameters that exist
Yeah.
currently that would also need to be overcome. And
Yeah.
Okay.
Past that, if this committee is a function of the city council and the mayor's authorities, then I would just ask that you collaborate with myself and my chairman to really, again, begin coming up with the parameters for what that group would look like, incorporating the discussion that we have here. The bigger thing I think that we're going to get to relatively quickly is what kind of timeline are we really discussing for this committee to be successful? We did not, again, find ourselves in this situation overnight. We're not going to find ourselves getting out of this situation overnight. And so just understanding that this will take time.
Thank you.
All right.
And I think as people apply, they need to know that.
Yeah.
I mean, we need workers, we don't just need
Retirees.
talkers. We need people who are willing to dig into rather analytical, complex ideation and come up with solutions that are legal and are needed and are efficacious for everybody. So it's going to be a committee that it's going to take a lot of devotion and commitment.
So I heard you state that we're gonna wait to, after you address those questions, then you're gonna get back to us with that. And then from there, we can probably, what charges they want this committee to be doing. Is that, I understand that correctly?
Greg, I really appreciate it.
He's like a regular ball barker.
The other thing that, again, would be, I think, be beneficial from the planning and zoning side is for the city council to look at the recommendations and then for them to put priorities on those. So that we can then, as we begin addressing the body at large, figure out where we should be putting our efforts.
Mayor, should by any chance the council then have have our own workshop collectively, have our own workshop going over this and going over what we think the needs are? Because I think if we put it in a regular, not that I'm advocating another meeting necessarily, but if we put it in the regular meeting, I think we end up clamming up a little bit in a regular meeting, and I think we talk a little bit more openly in workshops. So I mean, you can make that decision, the council can make that decision, but we probably need to do a workshop for a couple hours, just talking about this, letting the council see whether they want to accept it, whatever their input is into it, and then we can make our objectives of what we want on the committee, and then go to the regular council meeting, and then make the final action.
I believe I brought this up in the last council meeting. You know, I thought every council member should submit their priorities to Devin. And I still think that's a good idea, and I believe that's a starting point so that we don't get in, if we have a workshop, get into this workshop, and we're just going round and around.
Right.
Okay? So that's just a suggestion.
We could have that done, what you're suggesting, bring that to everybody, and then take that into the workshop, and then maybe we could make some progress.
They're two or three priorities.
And then, and we'll probably need to put some type of timeline on it to ensure that everybody gets done in a timely fashion, so that, we're not waiting on somebody else to get it done. We got two people that's doing it, the others are waiting on it, so, it's something where everybody will have to take part in this.
Yeah. What will help me, though, to prioritize is to have the answers to some of the questions first. This is the law, and these are the answers that the planning and zone commissioners have to be able to hand to you, so that then we can have a more fine-tuned conversation as a council workshop. So when we're thinking about timeline, their timeline is in this as well.
So just to be clear and make sure that we're all thinking the same way you all thinking, so, Holden, his staff will look at those and answer the questions which was brought to them. Then after that is done, once that information's got out, then we as a council can look at that and prioritize what we see as the top two items to address. Then from there, once we get all that information together, then we can also look at having a separate workshop for us, the council, and then once we get that all done and probably have a conversation, then we'll know exactly what this committee should be doing, the charge of this committee. We want you to address these particular items. We want an action item and a solution to this. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Well, if I could just add one small thing to this.
Okay.
Number one, my planning commission only meets once a month. Our
Right.
next meeting is April 9th. Now, it is my goal and intent moving out of this work session to try to address the questions and provide a staff's perspective on this memorandum with enough time for my planning commission to review this on the 9th, and we'll add this to the agenda. That, I think, is the quickest thing we can do. With that, understanding that as staff, we are here to support and not to direct.
Right.
I do want you to be aware that some of the questions, in particular what Mr. Crisp has presented, are really policy level questions. In particular, should the city consider an ordinance to officially recognize the USB?
That would be
As
one-
staff,
This is one
I'm
of
not
the-
telling you guys
Right.
what to do.
And that could be one, this
Yeah.
council need to be addressed as one of the prioritized things, to prioritize this. Do we want to do that ourselves? Okay.
Right. Several of those questions were more open discussion for the
Okay.
council, but some were more for.
So you really gonna be addressing only the ones that really ask you the law and how to apply to planning and zoning issues. All the other policy things, that's something we can talk about as to, in our work session, where we talk about, do we want to regulate our service urban boundary to which states within a certain route?
Well, he can, and when you're answering those, like that one, for instance, that's a great one, you can put on there, policy base, and just go, move on to whatever the next one is, and that way we'll have the definition of that. But it's still with Greg's suggestion, I would love to have, really before that, I would still like to have the other council members' ideas of what
Okay, absolutely.
concerns them, and maybe 5 or 6 of us will end up having one of the same ones, and then we can really target in on that as well as take the answers from the other one.
And I
I know
think,
we've all heard from our constituents.
I think Holden too, anything when you're answering those, even if they're policy-based, if you have perspective or history
Right.
on things like that, say, here's been my experience with similar things, and here's the advantages,
Here's
and
the
here may be
pros
the
and
pitfalls,
cons.
yeah.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and the 3 very learned attorneys sitting in here, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things, going back to like the traffic studies, one of the things that we can do is, we can't make things less stringent than state law, but we can take things a little farther than state law. We can tighten things down a little bit more. So we can make more requirements of that. And if I'm wrong, one of the 3 attorneys, please tell me I'm wrong. But that's one of the things that we have the power to do, is tighten things down a little farther than what state law has. So that's something to think about and consider as well.
Okay.
So, Mary, is there anything other than the 6 ZODAs that were already out there that the commission would want us to be looking at on behalf of the community from your perspective as a commission?
I think obviously the things that we've talked about tonight, the traffic studies, I think I mentioned the connectivity.
Right.
Right, I think that's important. Elise or Holden, does anything come to your mind in terms of recent discussion? I feel like it's encompassed in the 6 ZODAs, but if there's anything I'm not thinking of.
Yeah, those zoning ordinance text amendments really were my staff and the commission's best foot forward on trying to address several of the issues that we'd identified.
Yeah.
Past that, again, looking forward, this idea of form-based code, I think really might be answering a lot of the questions and concerns that we're coming up with as a part of this discussion. And so, and I believe we've talked as a commission about what different ways that we could handle developments and kind of the review process for those. I'll look down this line here.
Because we can't forget what we're hearing nationally and locally and statewide. It's housing, housing, housing. And so that has to be one of, in my mind,
Absolutely.
a main emphasis. Or if we can help housing in changes that are being made, I think that is going to be a big public concern and relief to them.
We had a situation here maybe last month or month before last where it came up in the subdivision about, where we had the ice and snow, we couldn't move it. And they were talking about the streets that were so narrow that where you're gonna put it, first of all, if you did move it, they couldn't get by. So things like that starting to pop up that are, we gotta think in the future, what do we do about that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important with each of the topics, whether it's a policy like city has its own USB ordinance or not, what are those pros and cons, or what could be the unintended consequences or the benefits of doing that, again, because it's not necessarily just the city of Georgetown. How does that impact then the comp plan discussions and the interaction with the county and those kinds of things? What will we then have to change in our processes, to be able to accommodate those kinds of things in the future, to be able to update the comp plan, for instance, just as an example.
Okay. All right, so we talked about the steering committee formation, we're gonna wait till after Holden gets that, and he's gonna need some time. You said you don't meet again, you need some time for for your group to look at it and so on. So what would be a good working timeline for you that you can get this back to us? Is there,
So again, the good news is this isn't actually the first time we've looked at this document. We've had it since January.
okay,
So our intent will be to put this on the agenda for discussion at the April 9th Planning Commission meeting. From there, I will ask for the, essentially, the Planning Commission to forward a memo back to the City Council addressing these points. That should get to you, I mean, that Friday is the 10th. I'm not sure when is the next City Council after that. How long do you need for your agenda?
Before April 10th,
Yeah,
next meeting will be 27th, would have to be the following week.
okay.
So it's
Okay. Okay. That's your timeline.
okay. So, all right. All right, next, a quarterly joint work session, so, so it's setting this up to where we do this, every 3 to 4 months, is that correct? So, with the, something that, we want to, as he said, this is gonna take a while. So he's not gonna try, we're gonna meet 1 or 2 times and then be done with this, to stay with the process, to make sure that we're following things and making sure that we're keeping everything in alignment, meeting quarterly, every 3 months would be, any objection to that? That's something we have to put into place?
Yeah, that'd be fine. I think as far as getting our ducks in a row, and as far as the city, and then after that, set up, after we kind of get it together, and then set up after that to meet quarterly, because it would be kind of nice just to know if we, even if we don't have major things, that you all can tell us what's coming down the pike, what's going on, whether it's state, local, something's happening here. So, and then if we decide, well, we don't need them after all, then we can stop.
Okay,
And you could have updates from the steering committee that's put together as well.
Yes.
okay, all right. So we'll talk about setting that up. All right, item D, review, prioritize action items from Chapter 11, implementation of the comprehensive plan. And I think you all should have that on your sheet, looks like this. All right.
I do want to speak very briefly, as I'm going to call myself the subject matter expert for the
Okay,
comprehensive
yes.
plan. Several of the items, as you guys read through it, you may identify that several of these items are items that you guys have expressed interest in. So, a transportation master plan, the vacant property task force, design standards for commercial development. So when we're trying to think about like form-based mechanisms, like some of these things we have identified already, but it is even better than to say, yeah, we still think this is valuable. I think that's a critical part of this whole group, is that just because it's here doesn't mean we have to do it, but we want to do it, so.
Any comment on this? So it's actually us looking at this and looking at what do you all think that is probably the big ticket item? That's what this next item is talking about doing. Looking at this here, what do you all see as, here, this is the one that we need to look at. These are big ticket items that we need to look at.
I wonder if there's value in meshing this with the prioritized goals that come out of council. Taking those and saying, okay, looking at these and how do those mesh, and is there anything that pops out of here that's not in those prioritized goals that needs to be added for the steering committee? Does that make sense? Seems like there'll be overlap for sure.
Probably so.
Yeah, and if there's gonna be a process to prioritize them through that, it might be helpful to kind of mesh the two. Just my thought, obviously, council's decision.
So this will be something that we can talk a little bit more in a work session that you're talking about as we get that formulated?
Potentially, if you wanted to incorporate the other process of prioritizing, and then see what's on here that you didn't talk about already that maybe needs to be added to the priorities. Seems like it might streamline it.
So you're going to have a project manager, potentially. That looks like it would be a really helpful thing.
Yeah, absolutely, I would think.
So that, I think that will be a key to communication and transparency,
Absolutely,
so.
yeah.
I think one of the things that, and I'm not picking on Candace, but, you know, the missing middle housing and the helping address the plan for homelessness, I think, you know, it comes back to be it the tiny homes or more affordable, smaller housing, rather than like Ball Home stood up here and said, well, the market dictates a $350,000 home. Well, not everybody can afford a $350,000 home. So I think that's where we need to look at the missing smaller houses, even including the tiny homes, to help out and get that program kicked off in a better suited way, because, you know, Candace is, you know, it's tough for her trying to struggle to get houses to get people moved into. And I think that's something that I think this committee that we're talking about can really push and bring into a better life.
So what I'm hearing you say that, so your number one priority, if you look at this, would be housing.
Well, that's addressed at number 9 in here.
So it's addressed at number 9, so do you see that as being, should be the top item? Or you're gonna move it from that spot and kind of, you know, that's what I'm hearing, okay? Different aspects. Anyone else have a comment? Want to?
So tiny, are you talking about a particular location, or could they be anywhere?
We can do it as their own standalone neighborhood. We can have them set up to where if somebody has, say, 2 or 3 acres, they want to put within the city limits, they want to put them up, go for it, you know, if all criteria is met, whatever the case may be, so.
So then I think it would be development of ordinances that support that type of development,
Yes.
right?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Because you obviously have to have the market for them too, but the development of an ordinance that would allow those if the market supports it.
Yes.
I believe places like Tennessee or somewhere already have lots of them, right? So I don't know where
Yeah.
they're located.
It seems like a lot of those are more based on, from what I've seen, it seems like they're more based into a more rural area instead of in the city area, and then take a complex of several acres, and then kind of like we would around here would think of like a trailer park kind of thing, but instead it would be tiny homes that's developed in that area. So if it's outside of our city's jurisdiction, but if we could come up with something, like you're talking about, especially like infilling and some things like that, that we could do for it, or instead, as you all know, I don't like apartments, instead maybe some of the area could be developed to that instead of apartments, and then have different types of homes into it or something. But you're right, Mary's right, it all has to be decided by ordinance as to how that happens. But we can do some more investigation to how it, and I'm sure Houghton has, to how that's done in other communities.
I have a question. I've glanced through this, so it may be in there somewhere. Have we identified anything to do with short-term rentals and how they affect the market, the affordable housing market?
So luckily, the city of Georgetown did conduct a housing needs assessment. The answer for that is we need more housing. Now, there's a lot of literature out there that talks about the potential impact for short-term rentals on the housing market. From planning and zoning's perspective, we regulate short-term rentals very little. I believe that is in large part kind of statewide. There's not a lot of regulations related to them.
It is
Now,
changing, though.
yeah.
That's changing.
Yeah. Where's Miss Candace Whitehouse? Yeah. Ms. Candace Whitehouse is an advocate. I am not.
An
So I'm not going to come down
an advocate of which?
for housing. So she's gonna have, I think, more pointed opinions than I am on this. My opinion on this is we have to respect a private property owner's right to use their property the way they want to use it. At the same time, we have to understand that the use of a house as a short-term rental is different from what is typically imagined in a neighborhood as a housing stock or housing unit. Emily stood up, and so.
Yeah, I think for the purpose of our work session, I think we want to try to stay a little bit more focused with our conversation. So I think, reminder, the purpose of this implementation plan, these are action items that were created from the undertaking, the review of the comp plan, goals and objectives, all these things. And these were put together and they were assigned to different bodies and agencies to address. So I think the goal of this conversation is more, where are we as a community, individual agencies, in addressing these different action items? And if we have not done anything, are there specific ones that we want to tackle? So in the housing conversation, maybe down the road, that could be a great area for short-term rentals, other types of housing ideas to come up in a more pointed discussion. But I think this is more just trying to move forward with action items, and with all the different initiatives that are going on in our community, there's a lot of overlap. There are a lot of people trying to do similar things. So it's just trying to make sure that everyone, whether you're on the same page or not, we at least have common goals we're trying to move towards, I believe, would probably be a better, more focused conversation related to this. It's also something too, if you all want to come back at your next work session and have a more intense conversation or a more focused conversation on this, you could also do that as well, so.
The one thing to that point that I might suggest is, since each one of these has a owner or point of contact, that we make the request of each of these folks to develop what is the status and of all the items that you have on this list, so that then we know and we can take that as here's the current situation, now where do we need to go from here? What's done, what's not? Because Greg, to your point, the number 9, the housing needs assessment was done. So, we can find out where we are. Did we get what we wanted out of that? Or what, each one of these items, did it really answer the question or not? And then, do they need to do more or less, or is it done? So. All right. Any other comment? All right, thank you. Next is to define next steps and annual action item, if any, for joint work session. I think we talked a little bit about that already. So is that we want to establish a every 3 months kind of calendar to do a work session. If I'm hearing that correctly. Is that correct?
Would that be in June, Mayor, tentatively?
Would say 3 months, yes. Let me know.
Well, Karen made the point that once maybe we implement those meetings after
We get all that
we
done.
get this first part done, because what are we going to do but talk about the same stuff if we haven't?
Okay. So once we get all the information in, then we can establish the actual schedule at that point in time. So it will change. Okay. All right, next item is item number 7, comments from city council and planning commissioner members. So I'm gonna start here. If anybody got any comments, say them.
I just want to say thank you to the commission. Thank you to the staff for coming and being a part of this. Hopefully, we're going to get something going and we're going to start, but at least we're having a conversation. And so hopefully the council will get it organized and we can go a little bit further. And so we will create the relationship with the planning and zoning with the city council, so we're both on the same table when we can be and same together. So thank you all for spending your time and coming. Appreciate it.
All right, any others? Anybody?
Just ditto. Thank you all for the time tonight. Look forward to the next step.
All right.
Yeah, grateful to the council and the commission for coming together for this. Feels like it's been a productive conversation. Looking forward to making progress on these, and I just think we need to keep people first in mind and try and improve our community, however we go about doing that.
Ms. Singer?
I would say thanks for the invitation for the joint work session. I think hopefully it's been informative on both sides. And on the Planning Commission side, I know sometimes folks can view us as adversaries, depending on what side of the coin you're on. And certainly, from our perspective, we have a fantastic staff that we look to provide us with recommendations, and then to make decisions as a commission based off what our ordinances are. Sometimes those make people happy, sometimes they don't make people happy. So I think starting with, and I'm a big proponent, and even when folks are coming to me complaining about things, saying it all starts with what the ordinances are. So if we want change to the decisions that are made, and if folks don't like the decisions that are made, it all starts with the ordinances and what we need to adjust to balance, again, what the housing needs are, what the landowners' rights are, what the market supports, right, and what we need as a community now, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and 50 years, to make sure that we're still a thriving and vibrant community. And we're, I think I can speak for all the commission to say we're 100% in for that.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Brent?
Just want to say thank you to P&Z, the committee, and everyone. And it's a lot of work to be done, and I can't wait to get on it and see some things start moving.
Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you all.
Mr. Stone?
Thank you all, appreciate you being here.
Okay, Mr. Stone?
One thing on my mind
there's
was
two
that
stones.
I know we need the small houses, probably ought to have them in a short subdivision. But one thing's on my mind is some kind of a requirement you want to have on automobiles.
Here you go, get the mic.
Automobiles parked. I've already said enough.
Mr. Garrett?
Well, I work with the planning and zoning commission and these guys all the time. I know how they think. But it's good to hear how the council think independently on a lot of this stuff, but it actually comes back to the apex, on everybody on the same page. And that's what it takes to be a successful community. And I think we're going in the right direction.
Mr. Dare?
I would agree. I think a lot of our discussion today has been on the future, and I know that's coming up, and that's a big part of what we're working on. But I do feel like we still need to remember the people that have lived here and already live here. And that's the concern. I think a lot of traffic concerns come from those who already live here, but with all of the growth that's coming, all of the change that's coming, there are going to be hiccups, and you can't always prepare for all of those. And unfortunately, when we're getting things like Mary said, we're within limitations. You know, if they say the road is wide enough and it supports the neighborhood connecting, we can't say no to the connecting neighborhood anymore. So there are a lot of things I think both sides didn't know that we can't see or we can't make a decision on. But it is nice to hear that we all have, I think, the same concerns. So getting together and working on it, I think is going to be great.
Yeah, thank you to everybody for opening the conversation and having a heart to serve the people. I think all of us want to do the right thing in a non-adversarial way, and I think that the communication that's been established here and the intention of going forward in a lot of complex ways is good. So I look forward to being able to make changes that are going to be beneficial for a growing community, but also for the people who are established.
Yeah, thanks for everyone for coming, the Planning Commission, the staff, and the City Council. I've sat on both sides, City Council and formerly on the Planning Commission, as chair at one point. So I see both sides, and it's really really good to see that we are now sitting together as two different bodies talking about these issues. When I was on Planning Commission, we never did this. So it was always sort of a, maybe an adversarial relationship between both. So it's really good to see this, that we're working together and working for the community to do what's best for everyone.
Mr. Crisp?
Yeah. To echo Greg's point, I'm also encouraged that we're having this conversation jointly because that type of alignment is really what's going to lead to progress with what we're looking for.
All righty. I think he's, so with that being said, if nothing else be brought before this, we will adjourn.